Hello everyone, my name is Pam Rao. I'm Senior Manager Product Development at BMC. Today we'll be talking about deployment management and some of the new features that are coming in the November release of Remedy. The agenda for today's presentation is a quick overview of deployment management. We'll talk about the primary use cases and then how we use this for deploying patches. We'll talk about complex application objects and how you migrate them using deployment management and file deployment, and then we'll conclude with a summary. So a quick overview of deployment management. This module has been in AR platform from version 9.0. What it allows you to do is create a package that includes AR system objects like forms, workflow, containers, packing lists, menus, etc. It can contain data. You can provide a form and qualification. You also have an option to suppress filters on the target when you're importing this package. Starting version 9.1, we also supported SRM objects like SRDs, PDTs, and supporting data, as well as now it supports HRCM solutions. One of the advantages of using deployment management is that the package you create is secure, as there's a checksum included, so nobody can manually tamper the package. As well as you can download this package to your client as a zip file and then easily move it to any other machine. We'll talk more about rollbacks as well, and rollback is a feature it's a big advantage of deployment management. And in version up until version 9.103, you can roll back AR definitions that are included in the package. How do you build a package using deployment management? You provide a package name and description. You can optionally attach files. For example, there'd be a README if it's a patch or a hotfix. You can add your changes as a line item in the package. And each package can contain a mix of forms, workflow, data, so each line item could be a different kind of content. You can sequence the line items as needed, and then save and build the package from the console. When the package is ready to deploy, you can export it as a zip file. You can also enable analyzer rules. Now, when you develop AR applications in Dev Studio, you might have seen that you can run analyzer that lets you know if there are any issues with the workflow and forms you have. For example, inefficient queries or unreferenced workflow, unused workflow, direct SQL in workflow, anything that might cause problems or might have a performance impact. Analyzer tags it and shows it to you as an error, a warning, or info. Now, in deployment management, you can choose to turn on analyzer rules that will apply when you build your package. You can also choose to say what happens when the analyzer rule runs and it provides, it comes back with an error or a warning or an info. What do you want the package to do at that time? You can say stop processing on error, warning, or info. And what happens at that point is that your package will display an error during building because one of these rules has not been met. Let's look at a typical development cycle using Deployment Manager. You might have a dev environment where your developers are making changes and customizing or creating new applications. And once they are done with their feature or their development work, they can create a package and build the package. Now they can export the package and send it to a QA environment where a deployment manager can import the package. On your QA environment, validation will happen. If everything is okay and the package is ready to be promoted, the package can be promoted to production where it's imported and it's ready to be used. Let's look at the primary use cases of deployment management. Now, one of the major use cases is migrating complex application objects. We talked about SRDs and HRCM catalog. There are other types of objects in ITSM suite. For example, task group templates, and these objects will be supported in deployment management in the November release. We also have smart IT customizations that are stored as metadata, and those will also be supported. There is an architecture in place to support other application objects in future, such as service targets and knowledge articles. The second use case for deployment management is for patching and hotfixing using this module. In future, BMC will be moving from installers to deployment packages for hotfixes and patches. We'll talk more about this use case in the upcoming slides. How do you make patch deployment and hotfix deployment easy using Deployment Manager? BMC will distribute a patch or a hotfix as a package, and now you can quickly install it on your, deploy it on your dev and verify it, and then move it to your test and prod environment. There's no need to run installers on multiple environments. There's no need to go through complex README. For example, hotfixes currently shipped have manual steps that you need to do to import def files and import ARX files, copy over jar files, and so there's a set of README steps that you need to follow. This is error prone and requires a lot of user intervention. Deployment Manager takes away that process and makes this process a lot more automated. Looking at application patches, currently you have Remedy, ITSM, and SRM application patches available. 9103 patch 1 is available as a deployment management package. What does it contain? It contains a packing list with forms and workflow, an ARX file with the updated entry of in share application properties, and README file. Data files and DVF binaries are optional in these packages, and if there are data files, they'll be included in the package. Deployment is very easy. As you can see, you go to the deployment management console and import your package and click deploy, and all the content will be deployed. Let's look at version updates in Share Application Properties. Share Application Properties form has entries for all the applications that are installed on your system, and there's a property name called version that has the updates to versions whenever you upgrade your applications or you apply a patch. Now the share application entry is included in the deployment package, and as you can see, it updates the property value for version from 9103 to, let's say, 9103.001 for the first patch. There's also an audit enabled now on the version property for share application properties, and this makes it easy for you to track the history of changes that have happened to this record. As you can see, every time you apply a patch or a hotfix or upgrade, your version changes will be tracked by this audit entry. There's also a report included where you can quickly report on all the changes that have happened to the version entry of share application properties. Viewing the patch content is very easy as well. When BMC ships an application patch using Deployment Management Console, it includes a packing list that has a list of forms and workflow that have been changed in the patch. Now you can go to Dev Studio and quickly open up the packing list to see the list of objects that were modified. Let's look at a process for customizations. For example, if the patch contains some objects that you have modified and you have overlays on those objects, once you install the patch on your development server, you will need to reconcile your customizations using the three-way reconciliation tool. Once you do that, you can validate the changes, and then you create a new package where you can add your customized reconciled objects and build a new package. At the end of this process, you will have one package that BMC provided and one package with your reconciled objects. And now you can promote both of these packages to your QA and prod. Let's look at what's new in deployment management. We talked a little bit about rollback earlier, and starting this release, data rollback is also supported. In previous releases, as I mentioned, only definitions were rolled back, and now you can roll back data as well. There's also a feature added for email notifications. You can configure email for notifications at the system level for overall notifications, or per package notifications are also allowed. So these notifications will be sent during build, deploy, or rollback based on the status changes. Archiving has been added to packages. As you know, once you start importing and deploying packages, you will have a number of packages in your console, and once they've been deployed and you've verified that they're successful, there might not be a reason to keep it around. Out of the box, we have a archiving rule enabled for archiving after 365 days. Obviously, that is configurable, and you can change that to a number that's suitable for you. There are some usability improvements in this console. The activity log is an area where you can go back and look at the history of everything that has happened for a package. For example, if you're building a package or you're deploying a package, you can take a look at when it was done, who deployed it, or if there were any errors that came in. And so the activity log UI has been improved to make it more usable and better visibility of the log. As well as when you're building your D2P package, if you're using AR server objects, there is a display-only form, a dialog that comes up where you can select the objects to add to your package. And now multi-select is enabled on that dialog, so you can quickly select the objects you want to add to the package and click Add to add them. We'll talk a little more about pre-checks for deployment and rollback, and this is a feature meant to introduce some verification before you deploy or roll back a package. Let's talk a little bit more about rollback. Before version 9103 patch 1, rollback was available only for AR server objects and SRM objects, but there was no rollback available for data files. As well as rollback required object modification log to be on your system. Now in 9103 patch 1, rollback for data was included. So that enabled us to roll back a version update in case you roll back your patch. But in 9103 patch 1, rollback still required object modification log to be on. Starting November release, there's no requirements for object modification log to be on. Now, there's a new client type introduced for deployment manager operations. And this ensures that even if you have your object modification log turned off just for the D2P operations, the server recognizes that it requires object modification, and it still stores the modified objects so that you can quickly roll it back. And similar to that, for attachment size and type restrictions are also overridden only for calls that are coming from Deployment Manager. What do we do with pre-checks for deployment and rollback? Now, as I mentioned, the goal for this feature is to provide checks to define conditions before you deploy and roll back. For example, if BMC ships a patch for 9.1 SP3, let's say patch 2, we need to make sure that when you're deploying this patch, that your system is at 9.1 SP3. To introduce a check like that, we have a qualification that can be evaluated before deployment. If there's a list of qualifications you can specify, and if any one of the qualification fails, a message is displayed explaining the failure reason. This is a UI that shows you how you can define your pre-checks. For example, a pre-check is a qualification that's based off of any form in the system. Most likely, the form used will be share application properties since we're doing version checks, but you could use it for with any other form in your system. And you can add a number of pre-checks, and you can tag it as a deployment or a rollback pre-check, and all of the qualifications are evaluated, and if any one of them is false, then the system will not allow you to deploy or roll back. Let's look at this demo that describes and shows you how these pre-checks are used.
Hello everyone. We are going to be quickly seeing a small demo for how you could use pre-checks to define your deployment and rollback conditions of particular packages. For this particular demo, we have created a small application which registers itself in share application properties. Initially, it is registered as 9103 sample application. The version is 9.1 SP3. What we are going to be doing is deploying two packages. The first package will update the version to patch 1, 9.1 SP3 patch 1, and the second package will update the version to 9.1 SP3 patch 2. Let's import the first package. The package is imported. Let's deploy it. The package is deployed. Let's see. Check share application properties. The version has been registered to 9.1 SP3 patch 1. Now let's deploy the second package. Importing the package. Select the package and deploy the second package. Second package is also deployed now. Let's check share application properties again. The version is updated to 9.1 SP3 patch 2. So in essence, what we have done is imported two different packages which are applying patches, which have patches and updating the version to patch 1 and patch 2. Since these packages are sitting on the server, and the rollback capability is also available, it's possible for someone to select the first patch or the first package that has been deployed and click on the rollback button and try to roll back the package. But if you define the package correctly and if you define your rollback checks correctly, you will not be able to do so. Here we implemented a check which says if you are not at 9.1 SP3 patch 1, you cannot roll it back. Let's take a look at what the package has. So let's take a look at the contents of the package here and see how we are building the pre-checks here. When you click on the Manage Pre-check button, it opens up this dialog where you can see the deployment checks and the rollback checks implemented for that particular package. For the first package, we said you can deploy this package only if you detect 9.1 SP3 as the version. if the version is not 9.1 sp3, you cannot deploy this package. And for the rollback condition, we said you can roll back this package only if 9.1.03 patch 1 is detected. If this condition is not met, you will not be allowed to roll back this package. When the second package was deployed, it updated the version to 9.1 sp3 patch 2. And since this condition failed in that scenario, we were not able to roll back the first package first. Now let's try rolling back the second package. The second package is rolled back because the condition was met for it. It said you can roll back the package only if patch 2 is registered. The rollback condition says only if patch 2 is registered, you can roll back the package. Since the condition was met, it rolled back the package. So when the rollback happens, the version also gets rolled back. So let's see if it did happen. Yes. So when the second package was rolled back, it said I was at patch 1 first to begin with, and that's what the version gets rolled back to. And all the contents within the package also get rolled back to this particular version. And now if I roll back my first package, since the condition is met for the rollback for the first package now, it can be rolled back now. And when I go to share application properties, you will see that the version goes back to 9.1 sp3.
Now let's talk about deploying packages with binaries. Up until now, we've discussed packages that have forms, workflow, data, and deployment management console can handle that. New in the November release is also handling binaries. When we ship patches and hotfixes for AR platform, they will contain primarily binaries and possibly forms and workflow as well. Packages containing binaries can be imported once in your server group and automatically deployed on all the machines in your server group. One thing to note is the auto deployment of files on servers is disabled by default for security reasons, and customers will need to enable it if they want the auto deployment feature to work. Using this feature, it's easy to have a zero downtime experience, as the patch or a hotfix will be applied on one server at a time, and then the server will get restarted and it'll move on to the next server. So you're in your server group, only one server at a time is impacted by the application of a patch or a hotfix. And the progress of this deployment on all the servers can easily be monitored from the deployment management console itself. Looking at the file deployment process a little bit more, there's a new module called single point deployment in AR platform, and this provides a single method for promoting binaries. You can deploy a patch or a hotfix without using an installer. The binaries are included as attachments in this form, in a record in this form, and the records of this form can be packaged using D2P, and that allows you to quickly import these records into your database, and then all the servers in your server group can download these binaries onto the server. So there's no manual steps required for deploying this binary payload. What components are patched using single point deployment? AR system server binaries plugins can be used, as well as CMDB plugins, mid-tier, smart reporting, and smart IT. All of these modules will support using single point deployment and D2P for patching and hotfixing. As I mentioned, file deployment across server group becomes very easy with this module, as package containing binaries is imported into the form once as it's a form in your database. It's imported, and the binaries are attachments to this form. The AR system monitor form contains machine registration, where all of your servers in your server group and your mid-tier server, they're all registered in this form, and deployment will then happen in order of the rankings defined in your monitor form. And you can control these rankings to make sure that the deployment happens in that order. In case there's a deployment or failure on any of the servers, the deployment on that server will be rolled back, and it can be retried after the issue is corrected. And explicit rollback is also supported, as in you can manually roll back anything that's been deployed using deployment management. Let's see now a demo of how binaries are deployed using this module.
Hi everyone. We'll be seeing a small demo related to a plugin deployment on a server setup where there are two servers configured within a server group environment. So I'll quickly open up one of the forms and show you one of the problematic scenarios. There is a custom plugin implemented here. When we perform a search in this particular form, the plugin returns the messages with all these typos in it. We will try to deploy a plugin, the fixed version of it, which will fix all these typos. Let's go to the home page. We will access the deployment management console. We will import the package with the new plugin. Once the package is imported, let's deploy it. So the package is deployed. Let's see if the binary within is also fully deployed. So to look at the status of the binaries which are included in the package, you need to open up the package and click on this View Payload Status button. Here it shows us that things are still in progress. The download has not completed. The download has completed on one of the servers, and the second server is still in pending status. So the first one completed the deployment. Now the second server, the processing is happening on the second server now. So on the second server also the binary is deployed. Let's go back to our test case and perform a search again and see what happens. We get the message saying that the plugin has been restarted. As part of this scenario, the plugins were deployed to all the servers configured within the server group environment, and also the plugin servers were restarted.
Here's a screenshot that shows you how you can view the status of binary deployment using deployment console. You can view the package, and there's a button for viewing payload status. And once you click that, it will show you the list of servers where packages are either waiting to be deployed or already deployed. And you can see the status on that form. This is the single point deployment payload and how you define a binary payload. This form has various fields to define your the payload name and payload type. and where it is supposed to reside based on the OS type. For Windows or Linux, there might be different paths where you want to deploy it. So these are typically the kind of things that you might include in a README file to deploy a file, and that kind of information is added in this form, and this allows the deployment plugin to understand how to deploy this particular binary. Now let's look at the other use case we discussed, migrating complex application objects across servers. How we define an application object is it's basically a collection of metadata in a set of forms. So an application object is, for example, an SRD that's the primary form is SRD, but it contains associated data in a number of forms and associations. So for example, SRDs, PDTs, task templates, approval processes, service targets, these are all examples of complex application objects. As we mentioned, what's currently supported is SRDs, PDTs, and HRCM solutions. Also supported in the November release is task templates, task group templates, and smart IT customizations. As you know, recreating these application objects across environments is tedious as well as error-prone. Deployment Management Console is able to understand the relationships between the metadata forms and quickly export all the data from the related forms and allow you to create a package as a zip file and move it to your target server. One exception to call out here is if the SRDs or task templates or task group templates contain foundation data like location, assignment, people, etc. Those are not included in this export, and those will need to be in sync between the source and target server. This data is staged during export and import, and it allows you to do validation of the package before promoting it. And as with data and other objects, rollback of package is also supported for application objects. This is an example of how you can create a package using task templates. There's a new content type called application object in the package, and this allows you, and under the content type menu, you will see a type menu that has task group and task templates, and you can select either one of those and add your task group templates and task templates to your package. Looking a little bit at the generic architecture that's been put in place to support these kind of application objects. The deployment console works with a plugin called AR Migrate plugin, and that orchestrates the export and import of objects. Now there's a new interface object called application object interface, and where you can register application objects, for example, a task template or a task group template. And that registration tells the AR Migrate plugin how to trigger the export workflow and the import workflow. The application objects themselves will need to have the workflow to export, stage, validate, and promote. And the interface knows how to trigger these workflow using service calls. And the AR Migrate plugin basically orchestrates the export and validate and import process. Now this architecture can be used to support other complex application objects in future. Looking at some of the best practices for usage of deployment management, As you've heard in this presentation, it is the best way to move customization across servers. It is a recommended way to move incremental changes to your data or application objects. You can easily track and manage your changes using this module. It's recommended to create smaller packages with an encapsulated set of changes that allows you to manage your packages well, and in case you need to roll back also, that it becomes easier to roll back if it's a smaller package. Just to understand that deployment management it's not a bulk data load tool. It allows you to create packages with data and move incremental data changes, but it is not meant for loading bulk data into the system. It's also not a replacement for an installer, and it's not used to install an entire application, and it is not a replacement for the Delta data migration utility. In summary, deployment management can be used for easy deployment of patches and hotfixes across servers. Notifications are sent out, and rollbacks are easy. There's one-click rollback of definitions and data as well as binaries. Big advantage of using this is a history is maintained. You can go back to deployment console and you can look at the activity log, and you can look at the list of packages to easily understand when a hotfix was applied or who applied it, which objects were modified. And lastly, complex application objects are easy to keep in sync between servers using this module. Thank you.